Hello everyone, Jay Whitner here with Space Headlines. We do a quick recap of what goes on in space each week. And today we're going to be talking about the fourth week of May 2018. Our first item pertains to SpaceX. Gwynne Shotwell was in an interview with CNBC, and she was talking about how two of Elon Musk's organizations might work together toward Mars settlement. And the idea is that they're a boring company, which, as you may be aware, is digging tunnels at the moment beneath Los Angeles, is planned for alleviating some of the Earth's transportation problems. The same technology, Gwynne Shotwell thinks, could be used on Mars to dig out space beneath the Martian surface for settlement, for labs, for storage, for whatever. And the primary reason for this is the radiation environment of Mars. So if we could transport machines that could dig beneath the surface effectively to make cubic for settlement purposes, that'd be awesome. So a very good idea. SpaceX had a launch out west from Vandenberg Air Force Base. They launched a Falcon 9 with 7 satellites aboard. And of these satellites, 2 of them were GRACEFO-SATs. That stands for Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment. Also part of the launch manifest for this flight was 5 Iridium satellites. And this was the second flight of a first stage Falcon 9. So they didn't try to recover it because the earlier versions of the Falcon 9, basically they seem to be flying them twice and then disposing of it. We won't have the multiple reuses really until the Block 5s are fully deployed. We had some really exciting stuff happen at the National Space Society's ISDC conference, the International Space Development Conference. I've been to a great many of these, but this one was really special. The highlight perhaps was Jeff Bezos was one of the big speakers at the conference. He's the founder of Amazon, a big space advocate, the founder of Blue Origin, and coincidentally the richest guy in the world. He made a big announcement at the ISDC that Amazon is going to step up and save the expanse. Thanks, Mr. Bezos. That was really great of you to do that. And it was really neat as part of the conference to have several members of the Expanse cast were present. Mr. Bezos was present with 1,000 or so people at the ISDC conference. The 4th season of The Expanse is going to be on Amazon, and future seasons beyond the 4th season will be on Amazon. And it was just a really cool event. And I guess one of the exciting people also, besides Mr. Bezos, was Steven Strait, and he plays the captain of the Rocinante. Jim Holden is his character. So great news at the ISDC, very exciting stuff. The White House released Space Directive 2, Space Policy Directive 2. The general intent of this is to reduce the red tape involved with space stuff. So they told, or this new directive tells, the Secretary of Transportation to make new streamlined regulations for launch and reentry, with the goal being to have 1 license for the whole enchilada instead of 2 licenses. There's also a directive in there to tell the Commerce Department to make their activities about space a one-stop shop, to make it really simple for space companies to comply with the government rules and get their work done. So very appealing, good step by the current administration. A startup called Phase 4 is building thrusters with some new technology. And they recently made a sale of some of their thrusters to NASA and Astrodigital. If you're familiar with Hall thrusters, these are very efficient thrusters that operate at very low thrust levels, but they go on for a very long time. So what this new company has done is they've made something very similar to a Hall thruster, but one that is cheaper and less complicated to build. This is a plasma propulsion system, and the big fundamental difference is they use radio frequency technology instead of electrodes to make the plasma, to make the whole thing work. So this is fundamentally a big step forward. NASA will be doing testing on their unit, and we'll see what the conclusions are. In a sad news story, we lost Alan Bean. Alan Bean, as you probably are aware if you're watching our show, was one of the Apollo astronauts. He was on the second mission to the moon later on in 1969, Apollo 12. And he also was the commander of the second mission to the first U.S. space station long ago, Skylab. And in addition to his astronaut abilities, he was also an artist who painted many scenes from the space environment. There's only 4 of the Apollo moonwalkers left with us: Buzz Aldrin, David Scott, Charlie Duke, and Harrison Schmitt. We really need to get on the stick and get some people back on the moon while some of those guys can see it. Blue Origin is making lots of news and moving forward with steady progress. They bought a landing ship. You're probably familiar with SpaceX, that they have the drone ship where the first stages of the Falcon 9s land on there. The Blue Origin has a similar notion for the first stage of their New Glenn rocket that's under development. The first stage of the New Glenn is designed to be fully reusable for up to 100 flights, which is really an amazing flight rate if they can achieve that. By the way, the 100 flight goal is the same goal they have for the Block 5 Falcon 9. So another thing that Blue Origin is working on is their Blue Moon cargo lander to take cargo to the lunar surface. That thing is designed to have a 5-ton capacity. So they're working on that, which would be a really huge step forward, because the absence of a good lunar lander that's robust has really been delaying our lunar return for quite some time. And apparently they're on track for the first flight of the New Glenn in 2020. The NASA safety people, there's an advisory panel that talks to NASA about various safety issues, and they've given a thumbs up to the plans that SpaceX has in terms of load and go fueling. So to give you the summarized version, the payload is in, the crew is in, and then they do the fueling, is what SpaceX wants to do. So the safety panel, the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel, ASAP, is their acronym. They seem to think this is a good thing. This is also good for commercial flight of crew. So this will be good news for SpaceX. They are using extremely low temperature fuels for their rockets. This adds to the density and gives them more margin. And the safety panel says commercial crew should be fine using this approach. Virgin Galactic had some good activities. They had their second successful powered flight test. And this is for the VSS Unity, is the name of the ship. In this test, they reached 115,000 feet of altitude and 1,300 mile-an-hour speed. So congrats to Virgin Galactic and George Whitesides and the team over there for another job well done. And we're looking forward to seeing the first suborbital flights. We've had some delays in commercial crew, and NASA's been trying to cope with this and determine how this interfaces with the International Space Station crew requirements and the contracts with the Russians for using Soyuz to launch crews up to the ISS. Basically, what NASA has done is they've pushed the contract to the very edge, pushing the last flight that the Russians would take our people up to the very end of the deal, which pushes that into early 2020. And the way the dates seem to be unfolding is that SpaceX and Boeing both should have their first crewed flight test next year in 2019. So if everything goes well, by 2020, perhaps we'd have a couple of flights and be ready to take over the crew transportation for American astronauts and other people that we want to take up there in place by the time the arrangements with the Russians terminate. That's it for Space Headlines, covering the 4th week of May 2018. Hope you enjoyed our show, and we'll be back in a couple of days with Space Headlines covering the 1st week of June. Thanks for your time. We'll see you then.